Let's do a Commodore thing. So you may remember this very grubby brown Commodore 64 that I picked up a couple of months ago because we made a video about it. And in that video we did some basic troubleshooting, trying to find out if we can get it working, which we didn't. So in this video we're going to try the kind of next level of repair and see what we can get away with. So to do that I'm going to use one tool and one purchase. So I'm going to use a Kung Fu flash, and we can use this as kind of like a dead test cartridge. We'll be showing how to do that in the video. And then the other thing we've got is a dead PLA. And the reason we bought that is because that's the most likely thing to have failed, looking at previous reports of what's likely to have failed. It could well be that it isn't that, and it could well be something to do with memory or another of the chips, but it seemed like a good place to start. So let's have a go, see how far we can get. So here we are. So this is the Kung Fu flash with an SD card in it, and there's various games and stuff on there. I'll show you how it works in a second. And it's plugged into my C64C that I know is working. We've got that plugged in to a rather nice Sony Trinitron flat screen 14-inch monitor, which is very nice. Basically, the reason I'm using this is that, well, I'll show you. So basically, this is the interface that you get with the Kung Fu flash, and any files that are on the SD card get shown in a little kind of menu like this for you, and you can go up and down and choose the one you want. And what it does, which is the useful bit, is it copies that into the flash memory on the card, so when you next boot you don't have to go through this process. And that's how it's useful in our case, because we want to have a dead test cartridge essentially. For example, at the moment it's in some games. I've just been playing Ghostbusters, for example. So if I power cycle, what I don't get is I don't get that menu. What happens is it goes straight through to loading Ghostbusters. Hopefully that will happen very quickly. There we go. So what we'll do is press the reset button on the card, and that lets us go back to the menu where we get to choose stuff. And what I'm going to do is go down to utilities and load the dead test cartridge into the flash memory on the card. It's then going to reboot, and we're going to get the dead test cartridge working, basically. Apologies for the rolling line on the screen, that's obviously a shutter issue. So basically we can just let this run on this one, and that's fine. And then if we power cycle the machine, it goes straight into the dead test cartridge. We know that because that's what just happened, but it takes 10 seconds to do the dead test part of it, so the screen is blank for that first 10 seconds or so. So let's try it on the other machine that we know is not working. So here is that very machine. Let's plug the Kung Fu flash into the cartridge port. Try not to break anything in the process. I do need to get a case for this, really. There we go. So just turn the other monitors off to get rid of any reflections as much as possible. So we're going to turn it on and see what happens. Probably nothing. So we're going to give that 10-second chance for the cartridge to work on the RAM. If after 10 to 15 seconds we don't get anything, we know that there's a very serious problem. So yeah, not a lot is happening. So we failed the dead test cartridge test. So that means we need to go inside again and start poking around with some chips. Okay, let's open this up and see what we can find. Okay, so the replacement part I've got is this PLA chip here, which is said to be the most common reason to get a black screen on boot. But I mean, it could be anything, but it's a good place to start. So the part I've got is a replacement. It's a modern equivalent. It's not a original. And as you can see, it is basically a small chip bonded to a large carrier, and that hopefully will work. So the chip came out very easily. If you remember in the other video we did use some deoxit in the socket, and maybe that's why it was so easy. But the other option is that it's actually not making very good contact in the socket. So let's put the replacement in, There's a little dimple in this end, so I'm guessing that's the orientation key. A little bit of dust there. I don't think that's likely to be causing any shorts or anything. That seems to be in okay. It's quite a lot taller than the chip we've taken out. Hopefully it's going to clear the keyboard. Or the keyboard probably stops about there, doesn't it? Yeah, there should be enough room. So the monitor is on. Haven't got any power yet, but let's do that next. Let's power it on, see if anything happens. No, although it is slightly different. We're getting a slightly different effect on the computer screen now, because before we got a very slight flicker of the screen, but nothing else. Now we're getting a flicker followed by, hey, it went out of sync, but it has now worked. Wow, okay. This is going to be a very short video. I wasn't expecting it to be that easy, to be honest. We don't know if it's fully working yet, so let's run the diagnostic cartridge on it. So we have the Kung Fu Flash cartridge plugged in. Let's turn it on. As you can see, after the last edit, I did actually go back to my old C64C and have a quick game of Arkanoid. But it appears to be loading. Let's interrupt that and... oh, got no keyboard attached, so that isn't going to work. Okay, we now have a keyboard. So let's back up to the top. Let's try this first one. So it's running through the diagnostics as we speak. It seems to be a pretty steady image on the screen. I don't think there's anything wrong with the video circuitry. Okay, so basically it's passed all the important tests. We don't have a loopback harness attached, so it's failing some of these tests as expected. The interrupt test is bad. I can't remember if that's normal for a C64. As I said in the previous video, I'm not that super okay with Commodore 64s, but it seems to be working completely normally. Let me just quickly find out if that interrupt test is a problem. So having just done a quick bit of research, it looks like the interrupt is always going to be bad if no harness is attached, and similar with U1 and U2 and U18, these may report bad without a harness. Let's try different test cartridges though, just to make sure. The machine itself seems to be working very well. There doesn't seem to be any physical problem. As I said, everything's correct. The amount of memory reported is correct. The counter maps are all correct. Visually it looks good. So yeah, so without the harness attached, it's going to give errors on those. That all seems fine. Let's just try that dead test cartridge. See if anything happens. So it's passed the RAM test. It's now moving on. Turn the volume up. I didn't hear any audio then, so that could be a problem. So it says it's doing a sound test, volume's turned up, and I'm not hearing anything, so there could be a problem with the sound circuitry next. Okay, well, there's definitely still a problem. What I've done is just lifted up the cover and pressed on the heatsink. That covers the SID chip, and as you can see, we're getting a crash followed by some video interruption. So there is still a problem with this computer. Let's just power cycle it. So even here with the full load, it appeared to go through the complete load, but it's now not running Arkanoid. So I think there's still a problem with this 64. Probably with the SID chip, I'm guessing, as there's no sound. So I was just looking at the board to see if there's any other problems I could spot, and this is a little bit odd. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a ball of solder on the leg of this IC here. And it looks like the chip itself is a little bit melted. So I think someone's trying to reflow this joint and it's not gone quite to plan. So that's one of the RAM chips, isn't it? So the RAM test should have picked that up if that was the problem. But that is interesting in and of itself. All the other solder joints look fine as far as I can tell. So if I press on this chip here, we don't get any crashes, but we do now get some random failures on other chips, like the PLA chip is now reporting to be bad, along with U18. So yeah, so we're getting some more reports of bad chips that we weren't getting originally, and I wonder if there's actually some dry solder joints on the board that have revealed themselves now, been flexing the board a little bit. Still passing the RAM check though, despite that very dodgy looking RAM leg. I'm curious to know what happens when we put the original PLA back in, so let's just quickly do that. Okay, I'm still getting a black screen when that happens, so the PLA is definitely dead. It seems unlikely that the replacement PLA is also not functioning correctly. It's more likely that the rest of the board has a fault somewhere. Let's take the board out and have a look at the underside. See if there's any clues there. So this is the area where the chip with the funny solder is on the other side. Looks totally fine on this side. I don't think it has been reflowed. I think it may have been bad from the factory. And they just got lucky. So yeah, so I don't think anything specific has been done work-wise on the bottom of the board in this area. This is the area where the PLA is on the other side. Everything looks fine with the naked eye, but we're going to need to get in a little bit closer. So yeah, it looks like Ghostbusters is booted, but there's no sound, so definitely something wrong with that SID chip. So we're getting some errors from U18, which is the SID chip here. Cosmetically looks fine. I suppose it could have failed, or it could be still have a soldered dry joint. That one isn't socketed, which is a bit of a problem because my soldering skills aren't super great. Now we've got it half working, I'm a bit reluctant to start attacking it from a solder point of view. Let's just run the diagnostics again. So yeah, so a bad U18, a bad SID chip would explain no sound. In every other way it seems to be working, so that's good. Okay, clearly there's still more work to be done on this Commodore 64. We have made some improvements. We managed to get a replacement PLA. We managed to get a modern PLA, which has revived the machine to a certain extent. We've managed to use the diagnostic cartridges using the Kung Fu Flash. Definitely recommend one of those. But I think we need to look at the SID chip next. It's certainly in the area of the SID chip that seems to cause the crash when you press on the board. It doesn't seem to be anywhere else, but I can't see any poor connections. I'll have a go looking over it with the multimeter, see if I can find anything that's not working correctly, and see if we can go from there. But I think that's as far as we can go in this video, so I'm going to call it there. Part 2, not very long, but progress has been made. Part 3 hopefully will be a little bit more successful, and hopefully you'll join me for that whenever I can get around to it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're into that sort of thing. It always helps, and we will see you in the next one.